Very cool.
Awesome. So nice to be here. I'm really excited. I wish we had 3.5 hours, not 35 minutes. David Coe, CEO of Calm, all around wonderful person. We were just talking about his book tour and podcast and all around engagement with the broader community around mindfulness and wellness. So we are going to dive in. I am
Let's do it.
Doing the book talk, as you know, my personal favorite of the conference. The only thing that stands between the audience and cocktail hour is you and me. So we need to make it interesting.
All right.
This is really an honor for me. For those of you who know me, mindfulness and meditation and wellness are a personal passion project that I have also tried to incorporate into our work life at Cooley, and also the way that we come to our communities to foster a sense of belonging. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So what I would like to start with is a little bit of an intro. If you guys haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. Also super easy to listen to on Audible. But why, you have a busy life as the CEO of a major company with a big mandate. Why write the book?
Yeah. I wrote the book because the conversation around mental health today is probably the most approachable it's ever been. And I started to have more and more conversations with different business leaders. And many of them, while they were all having conversation around mental health, they didn't know how to have the conversation at work. And so I thought, how do we start to have a conversation about mental health at work? Because as many of you know, so much of the world today suffers from mental health, anxiety, depression, and it's not that when you go to work, it takes a pause and waits for you to get home. It's not like the TV show Severance. So, what we wanted to do was to really think about how do we bring this conversation to the workplace.
And the power of storytelling is a feature, not just a feature in your book, but the core of part of what you're doing in bringing this book forward. Talk a little bit about the power of storytelling, maybe some of the characters that are vulnerable enough to tell their stories to you in the book.
Yeah, when I first was starting thinking about the book, you could put a lot of stats. Everyone loves stats, but the fact is stats, it's hard to be actionable on some of these numbers. You can gloss over them. I could tell you right now in this room that when you think about mental health, 12 billion workdays every year are lost due to things around your mental health. I could tell you $6 trillion will be lost by 2030 around mental health. That's really hard to action against, and it's hard to personalize. And so a lot of what I started to do here around storytelling was to have conversations with people and about their own journeys. One of my first was with Randall Park, the director, and I love the fact that he was so present, so vulnerable. He didn't know myself, and we just started talking about his own mental health journey. And in fact, when I interviewed him, he said, if it wasn't for my ability to have learned meditation and how to go through that, I wouldn't be here today because I just had a panic attack earlier. And because I was able to have some of these techniques, I was able to come and have this interview with you today. That really just set the tone for the entire book. And from that, I started having conversations with many people, whether from the business side or entertainment side, and really just documenting their own stories. And I was just so appreciative that they would open up and share their stories with me.
I think it's so interesting sometimes. Mindfulness or meditation or any sort of the modalities of wellness can feel a little bit elitist.
Yeah.
So we're very comfortable talking about using those frameworks as tools to peak performance or to success or
That's right.
to highlight the 25 amazing things we were able to jam into 2 days or whatever the framework is that's sort of being sold. And I think what's interesting about the way that you write the book, you obviously run a business, but I never felt like you were trying to capitalize on anybody's harm.
Yeah.
Nor were you trying to sell a product, which is, I think, a very fine balance. So kudos to the work that must have gone into that, because so you are willing to expose sort of the underbelly of mental health without turning it into something to sell or to sort of dwell on. I think you provide a path with the storytelling that allows people to find themselves in so many different types of stories. So I have to read this passage because I think it's so interesting. These are your words.
Yeah.
I'm not a hugger, so note to self on cocktail hour. I'm not a hugger. In fact, I am not always great at letting the people who matter to me, like my friends, know just how important they are. Side note, I'm working on it. Therefore, I'm the poster child for why we sometimes do not have the conversations about mental health that we should. We say to each other, "You good?" We expect the answer to be, "Yeah, I'm good." And then we move on. "You good?" It's a social contract of sorts. We all agree to smile and nod and go on our way, and I don't think that's a good enough answer anymore. I have been guilty of it, and after the last few years especially, I know I can do better. What is the implicit contract of "are you good"? It's that you will give me a superficial answer and we can both move on with our day. Except this book has been filled with some fairly meaningful conversations and sobering statistics. I think that is like such the perfect way to distill, one, your humility and vulnerability and humor, very witty book, but also to break down sort of the daily habits that we get into that may be eroding our ability to create community and belonging, even in the smallest, tiniest of ways. And I just love this passage because, of course, for any of us who have children, you ask them, "How was your?" And they're like, "Good."
Yeah.
And we somehow, we accept it and move on. The concept you use in the book is to train us to think about our brain like a battery.
Yeah.
And so one of the prompts, I love the conversation prompts. You literally give us like pages
I do.
of other conversation prompts. You say you're fine, but I want to be sure you're being honest. Are you really okay? What can I do to support you? I mean, in case you need some prompts in your own life, they're here on page 153. But talk a little bit about this concept of sort of checking in. Instead of like, "Are you good?" What's your battery? Where's your level? Talk to us about why you use that as the metaphor.
I think, well, thank you for sharing and reading that. I'll take a quick step back. I found myself so often, how often have you just like asked somebody, "How are you doing?" and you just want them to say, "Fine," I realized I was doing this quite often at work. I would walk by somebody and I'd be like, "You good?" And they'd be like, "I'm good." And you're like, "Great," because I don't want them to tell me anything else, right? I don't want them to go, "Hey boss, I'm not doing so good." "Wait, what? I have to go to this meeting," and then you're like, I have to create space and time. So I actually started being a lot more intentional with that, and I would ask the question twice. And so I would create some space. I'd be like, "How are you doing?" A lot of times they would say, "Fine." I would say, "How are you really doing?" And sometimes they would say, "I'm great." But sometimes I've gotten the response, "Hey, I'm not doing so good." And because I knew I was going to be a lot more intentional and create space for that, I could have the conversation of the why. And so often I didn't give myself the time and the space for that. So for many of you who ask those questions out there to other colleagues, I think it's really important that we're really intentional with that wording. In terms of the battery conversation, that came from a friend of mine at work. And she came back and I asked her how her trip was. And she said she has 2 young boys. And if she asks them, "How are you doing?" they say, "Mom, I'm fine, go away." But if she asks them how their battery is, they're very honest around that because that's what they've grown up around technology. They'll say, "My battery's at 40%. Or my battery's at 70%. So she'll know, "Oh, you need a snack," or "We need to get you out," or "You need some food," or "How are you thinking about things?" I wanted to run with that. And so I took that concept and we started at work first. At Calm, we were like, let's ask people how their battery is. Because it's much easier to go, "How's your battery?" than "How's your mental health?" And I think what we did was we took a very heavy topic, or what can be perceived as a heavy topic, and we made it very relatable into everything that we understand. Everyone understands like the battery levels. We've all grown up around technology, and we can all talk through that. And so what I have found is more people now being much more open to a heavy topic by really just simplifying it and making analogies to a battery.
Yeah, I love it. It makes it it democratizes the concept.
Yeah.
right? And it allows you to ask the same question to your right hand in the C-suite as the person you've not yet met that just walked in the door of your company.
That's right.
Yeah, I love it. So we obviously are here with a little bit of a legal bent. Our audience is full of lawyers and other execs, people who service clients in service industries all day long. I think the interesting thing about the way that particularly lawyers or executives or lawyers who serve executives, we're sort of 24/7 on, right? And in today's market, whether that is literally the market being volatile, whether that is political pressure, whether that is investor pressure, it is just on, right? And I think that you talk beautifully about leadership in your book. I think your book could be just as much about leadership as it could be about understanding concepts around mindfulness or batteries. And I was struck while reading that many of the lessons I think you are vulnerable enough to show your learnings on are really centered around leadership and walking the walk, talking the talk are important to you. And I'm thinking about what we can learn using this sort of battery level concept as a metaphor in our organizations or our communities. You touch on concepts in the book around being better listeners, setting better boundaries, being more explicit models of the values that we practice. You may practice them, but you actually have to show them, be visible with them, model them. What are the most effective strategies that you use, either as a leader or that you watch other leaders doing that you would like to emulate in modeling a no burnout culture, no burnout expectation level?
Yeah, in the book, one of the people I spent a lot of time with was John Sculley, the former CEO of Apple. And we didn't spend a lot of time talking about Steve Jobs. We talked about how he ran Apple. And one of the things that he said to me was, and this was probably really defines who he is and how he thought about running a company from a leadership perspective, especially around your mental health, was he said, on my business card, it didn't say I was CEO. It said I was Chief Listening Officer. And so I want you to go into a room and listen first and talk last. And so one of the
hard,
things,
really
it's very
hard,
right? So we're trained to go in and to talk first. What's our opinions, and we're trained to go and start. And what he really pushed on me was to go last and to hear all the others in the room first and to do it consistently. I thought that was a wonderful piece of advice. I love the fact that he put on his business card, Chief Listening Officer. And I really appreciated the fact that he really practiced what he preached. The other individual from a business perspective was Jack Rowe. Jack Rowe was the former CEO of Apple, CEO of Aetna. And he ran Aetna for a long period of time, Harvard medical president. And one of the things that he said to me was, one of the most important things you need to do and tell your teams to do is to two things. One is to get out of gear every once in a while, because all of you in this room are geared to go at 10. And the second thing he said is to create time and space for yourself on your calendars. I think so many of us are, it's not about the number of things that we have scheduled, it's about the quality of that time that we have. And so let's not fill up our time with as many meetings as we can, or maybe not as many billable hours as you want. But he was just like, hey, put some time for yourself so that you can be really thoughtful about the next meeting or the meetings you have the next day. And I love that piece of advice. I try to do that today for myself. I try to make sure that if I feel like I need to take a break, I'm doing those things and scheduling them actually in the calendar.
You talk to a lot of different organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, the data you have anecdotally must be amazing. Maybe a second book. I'll pressure you because this one's so good. When you travel and talk to different leaders and sort of deep dive into their orgs through their own stories, what do you think the true cost of stress is on an organization or a community? Help us, whether that's through a particular anecdote or your own observation. What is really the cost?
Yeah. So that's such a great question, Jimmy. And I'll tell you, most of the leaders, I've spent so much time with leaders all over the country, and from the largest healthcare companies to entertainment and all over, financial as well. What I can tell you is at the highest levels, they understand there's a problem. At the highest levels, they understand that, if we don't really think about how do we take care of our employees because it's so hard to recruit them and retain them, that if we're not really thinking them from a 360 standpoint, they're not going to be with you long term. And there's a lot of things around quiet quitting as well. So that recognition is there. A lot of times, they don't know how to approach and to start. They put so much of the emphasis on the HR teams. And they're like, benefit teams, you go figure it out. HR teams, you go figure it out. And they'll be like, and then they don't quite understand when the numbers aren't up to their expectations. And a lot of times I sit with them to tell them it starts with you all. It starts with the culture, it starts the tone that you're setting at the top. Some of them get it right away, and they jump into it. They start taking notes, they start sending out emails, they want to get very involved in employee wellness. Some of them, quite frankly, don't. And it's been a work in progress. They understand that, there's a lot of things around stress, anxiety, and so we try to give them other techniques. So the cost is really high. Absenteeism, you don't quite know when someone is going to leave the job as well in terms of the quitting part that I mentioned. So they understand there's real risk there. What I would tell you for many of them is I tell them just to start. You got to start somewhere. I tell them, one of the biggest questions I get asked personally is, you're the CEO of Calm. Do you meditate all day? They just think I sit around the office meditating. My investors like TPG and others know that's not the case. I'm like, I am one of the most stressed out people you will ever meet. I'm high stress. Like literally, if you ask my employees, some of them are here today, I'm super stressed because every second of every day, someone is using Calm. So every second of every day, day or night, someone is turning us on globally. We're at close to 200 million downloads in 192 countries. Someone is turning to us in a moment of need. I feel that stress. So when these leaders are talking to me, I'm like, I'm with you. I am as stressed as you are, right? But there's different times. There's different types of stress. There's good stress, which is called eustress, that helps to build resiliency and helps to build your culture. Then there's bad stress that causes distress, and that can cause things like anxiety and depression and run your healthcare costs higher. So you as a leader have to figure out from a culture standpoint, how do you manage and have more good stress rather than bad stress in organizations? And we talk about them. And a lot of times it starts with yourself. I've been very vulnerable with my own organizations about my own mental health journey. I did not do any of this when I was younger. I thought this was a sign of weakness. I now know it's a sign of strength. And it has put and made our company a lot stronger in terms of our overall mission and what we're trying to do from a global standpoint.
So let's talk about some basics.
Yeah.
I really wish you meditated all day. It would be an amazing answer to how do you do what you do. What do you say to people who say, I just don't have time to meditate?
Get it all the time.
What's your answer? What do you say?
I say, do you breathe? A lot of times people will tell me I don't have time. And I'll tell you, if I look at our numbers, we have a lot of data, as you said. If you, certain age cohorts use our products differently. If you're over, let's say, 35, you may use this 10 minutes a day, about 300 minutes a month. If you're like 25 or younger, you'll be like 60 seconds. And I get a lot of feedback from younger cohorts that say to me, fix my mental health in 60 seconds. I mean, literally have emails, texts, Instagram, everything, 60 seconds. You have 60 seconds to fix me. And I'll be like, okay, let's start by breathing. We'll do that in 15 to 30 second increments. And then from there, I'll try to build and lather other things. And so a lot of times what I'll often tell people is we try to have something for you in every part of your journey. And it is a journey for many of us. And so whether it's quality sleep at night, and I can give you some tips around that, or to what you do in the workplace, to the waiting room, if you're on the bus or the train, We try to have something for you in all parts of that journey.
And talk a little bit about how you've inverted, and the battery analogy is one of them, but how you've inverted this concept that all technology is the opposite direction of stress relief, the opposite direction of dopamine addictive behavior. Tell us how we can use technology to actually alleviate stress without becoming, sort of a robot to it.
Yeah. So I'll start with something around sleep, because I just mentioned sleep a minute ago around this. There's so many sleep trackers that are out there today, right? And that will give you kind of data on your sleep, right? From wearables or you could have Sleep 8 from your bed, or there's just a lot of different types of devices that are out there today. One thing that we found is it's not about the quantity of your sleep, and I speak about this a lot, because half our users today come to us for sleep. They can't sleep at night. It's about the quality of your sleep. So how can you get the best quality of your sleep? I personally have done one thing that has done wonders, but it's probably going to be the hardest thing for you in this room to go do, is that I do not let the phone be the last thing I look at before I go to sleep or the first thing I do when I wake up. It will change your life. Now, you may say, yes, I would say try it once, check your numbers, try it again, because there's your numbers if you drink at night or you eat too late at night. But I will tell you, our minds, and especially for this room in particular, if you look at that phone as the last thing you go to bed, it will show you that you actually aren't going to go to bed anytime soon. And if you do, you're still thinking about it. And you may wake up an hour or two later because you're still thinking about that email that came from a colleague, a boss, or a client. And if the first thing you do is wake up and you look at your phone, you started your day off on the wrong foot. And so if you make this one change to your daily routine, and if you could take away one thing from today's conversation, I know this is hard, do not let the phone be the last thing you do before you go to bed and the first thing you do in the morning.
I mean, I used to sleep with my BlackBerry on my chest, right?
That's why.
How'd you make partner, Jamie? I slept with my BlackBerry on my chest, waiting for the vibration to wake me. Yeah,
we're learning about it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Let's shift gear just a little bit. You talk so eloquently about purpose in your book, and I'm a little nervous that this word is going to become the buzzword of tomorrow. That becomes a little bit meaningless, but while we still have some meaning attached to it, one of the ways that I think this book is just so beautiful is you get up underneath purpose through vulnerability. And it takes a lot to be, as an Asian man CEO, to decide that your whole book is about vulnerability. And I want to read from a passage and have you tell me where your conversation with Delilah, the radio host, moved you next. She, if you don't know her story, she lost a couple of sons, and she is a woman of very strong faith, and she writes a lot about her loss as her greatest power or purpose. And you write, each of us has, after the chapter about her story, you write, each of us has a hole in our heart. It may be from a different trauma, a different grief from Delilah's, a pain unique to us, but we each have something. A sacred space we hold in our hearts for the losses we have suffered. Imagine if more of us felt comfortable talking about this, if we all had Delilah's courage. But sheer fear and shame hold us back. It is my hope the conversations in this book can start to normalize vulnerability, as well as remind us that recognizing the holes in our hearts and caring for our mental health is a necessity.
Yeah, Delilah, for those of you who don't know, she's absolutely incredible. #1 radio host in America. She is a very strong woman of faith. I wanted to speak with her, and I was so honored that I would get time with her. She talked about loss, and she did lose 2 of her sons, and we had a deep conversation around this. And what I realized was, all of us have something or someone that we have felt loss around, but at times we don't talk about it. Maybe there's something that holds you back. When I lost a family member, I didn't talk about it with anyone. I just kind of held it inside. And I realized that I was bottling up a lot of emotion. And so for me, when I was thinking about my conversation with her, I just wish I had her strength. And she was able to speak to I wasn't close to her. I hadn't spent all this personal time with her. She just came out of the gate and we started talking about this. And it really, upon reflection, made me then go back and say, okay, what am I going to go do and change going forward? She actually gave me a lot of courage and strength to talk about some of this with my own employee base and with others. And I do some of this with other leaders today because I feel as they talk about some of their vulnerability, it doesn't make them a weaker leader. It makes them more a relatable leader because we've all suffered something in our past or we've all kind of struggled with certain areas. And I think, all of our employees or people that are going through something. And so I just felt this was another way for me to really kind of embrace her kind of message. And I just love the fact that I was able to have this conversation with her.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful part of the book. And I also like how early you put it in the book because those themes of vulnerability and having the courage to speak as sort of a method of finding your next thing is a really interesting metaphor for some of the other concepts. And you talk so beautifully about your own upbringing and what it means to be in America today with your voice and your history. Again, I'll just keep plugging the book all through cocktail hour, but I do think it's a really interesting way to think about finding purpose. And one of the things in particular we talk about in our employee base is how are we building connection and purpose. So thank you for
I think purpose is so important. I had my first panic attack when I was 14 years old. I didn't quite understand it. When I talked to my mom, I love my mom. She's given me great advice. But the one thing she told me was you have to power through it. And she didn't quite understand what was happening either. And I don't hold that against her. She just didn't understand in the moment. It took me many years later, as I got older in my career, to understand the things that were happening and when they would happen. And as I talk about it now with many folks, it just has opened the dialogue. The thing that I feel really proud of by working, the book and also working at Calm today is my two daughters who are 18 and 15, I love the fact that they use the products that I've built. I can tell you I've built other products here in the Valley, and I haven't allowed them to use some of those products. I'm not sure if this is being taped, but one of them you helped me take public around gaming, and I didn't let them use Zynga Poker. I didn't let them use poker. I didn't let them use some of these products. But what I will tell you is I'm really proud that they use these products today because one thing that we talk about is there are a lot of apps out there today that make you feel a little bit worse about yourself when you're done using them. And I just love the fact that you can feel a little bit better about yourself after you use Calm. So that drives a lot of purpose for me.
This interplay between purpose and gratitude those are like very close cousins. Yeah. And you're able to tell the stories of gratitude. I think it's a thread throughout your book, and you pause almost in each chapter or each story to bring that forward. So I'm going to challenge our audience today a little bit. I'm going to read just a second from a passage, and then we're going to try something together. You write, while I was writing this book, I had an opportunity to sit down with the Surgeon General, Dr. Devek Murthy. He shared a story about speaking to an audience of high school students. He had them take out their phones. I imagine they were already out, but that's okay. Then he wanted them all to pause a moment and think of someone in their lives they wanted to thank and compose a text. It could be as simple as thanking a parent or sibling for doing the dishes, or a girlfriend or boyfriend for kind words of affirmation, or as deep as a note to an influential teacher, mentor, coach, or loved one about what they meant to the person. After waiting a few minutes for everyone to compose their text, he had them all press send almost in unison, then hold up their phones with the flashlights on. There was a collective burst of joy and energy in the room in that moment, and a sea of light around everyone's heads. Like the power of prayer, gratitude does not need a scientific basis to work in people's lives. This is so moving to me. It is a way to move through the world. that helps us recharge our batteries and face adversity. Every single night before I go to bed, I send a note of something I am thankful for to my kids and wife. It is a perfect way to reflect on the day and, like in the exercise with the students and the Surgeon General, to do something that makes you and someone else feel good. Okay, so I've been reading this book off and on for about 2 weeks, and every night I have sent a text, and I have to say, it is a beautiful way to say goodbye to my phone at the end of the night, and also to put myself into a place of different reflection. So here's the challenge. I actually didn't bring my phone up like a good technology person, but please we have 5 minutes before we have to end our time with David. Please take out your phone, write one text message of gratitude to someone who matters to you.
You can keep it simple. You know, you can say, you've made me laugh, thank you for being, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be deep. But I think the key thing is, and someone recently did this to myself, Jay Shetty is one of our narrators. He wrote, on a Friday night, he said, thinking of you, and he sent it. And I was like, damn it, that's so good. I was like, I wish I had done that. It doesn't have to be all that deep, but it's just receiving that, I will tell you, makes the person on the other end feel so good. And it can make you feel really good in the process as well.
Yeah, I want to hear in the cocktail hour what you all get back. It's a very moving practice.
I send my kids snap faces every once in a while, and so you just meet them where they are in their technology world.
I think meeting people where they are is such an important concept. It's a little bit of a trite saying, but truly that is the pathway to the conversation that is the opposite of you good.
Yeah.
So
that could be the next title of the next book.
Hey, please, I will meet you right back here to talk about it again. In closing today, what is one thing you'd like us to walk away with?
I would say if there was one thing, it's like make time for yourself. I think so many of us are so hard on ourselves today. So give yourself a break. I think perfection is always expected. And so I think if you start with yourself, just give yourself a break, I would say there. I'll give you a few things, I think sometimes the second thing is, especially in the work environment, I often say this, I've seen work happiness increase 1,000-fold if you have one friend at work. One person to talk to, one person to confide in. It doesn't have to be just one. And you can make a real difference in workforce and workplace happiness by the power of one. And so if there was something I'd ask you to do, just like you've done text messages, if you have someone at work that you spend time with, you thank that person, because that power of one is so powerful, because it's someone to talk to and someone to listen. And then the third is really try that sleep thing. I push it because I think it will do wonders. I don't want you to leave it on your chest, although I thought that was really creative. But I do think if you are able to put it away, look, technology is always going to be around us. It's just how can we take breaks from it? And so I talk more about taking breaks from it rather than just kind of getting rid of it altogether.
It's an honor. Thank you for helping us with our own community. And for those of you who are inspired, this is the book. It's wonderful, very readable, very listenable.
Thank you. 100% of all proceeds of the book, the podcast, any speaking stuff, it goes to NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. So all the gross proceeds, not all gross proceeds, everything that comes in the door goes straight to them. It's a community-based mental health organization, and that's why I'm really passionate about this as well, because I think so much around mental health is community-based as well. And so I just thank you for purchasing the book. Love any feedback going forward, and thank you.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.